You're listening to Art Happens Here, the podcast that explores the often curious and occasionally amazing art installations on, in, and around the campuses of Lansing Community College. I'm your host, Bruce Mackley. Well, we're back, and I'm delighted and honored to have Vern Mesler here in the studio talking about his work with LCC and beyond with ironwork, structural steel fabrication, and art, sculpture design, things like that. There are a number of cross-disciplinary things with creatives, and this is one of the most extreme examples that I've encountered where you have somebody on different ends of the spectrum with their disciplines and so on. Vern, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I want to touch on a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Two sculptures in particular that have adorned our campuses. They've been moved around and repurposed. They caught my eye, as sculptures tend to do. Very daring, very beautiful. One is it's a number of spur gears.
Yeah.
And it looks like, and these are big. I'm talking, this thing is probably, 7 feet tall, maybe?
Yes.
And with a dozen or maybe 20
gears,
spur gears. These are circular gears with teeth that, designed to mesh and whatnot, and large machinery that have been spot welded on a larger arc, and it looks like they're rolling down.
Yes.
It looks like it's in motion, but it's not.
Right.
Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Well, it was one of with Mitzi Carroll, dance instructor here. It was one of the 5 sculptures that, and that came about because I had, there's a sculpture out here on the hill called the Sail. Mm-hmm. It's been reimagined. It's about 80-90% of my original sculptures. They've been added some other stuff to it. But if you look at the base, it's rounded. There's a round base. And when I fabricated, drew out the base, and it was, the first one I did was too big. It was too, and actually, it was a mistake.
A mistake.
Because it was too large. When I designed the sail sculpture here down on campus, it was supposed to be, the arch was supposed to be a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So I told the students that I was working with, I said, well, let's just set it aside and we'll think about it. And so then we finished the sail sculpture and got that done. And I got to looking at it, and we had a bunch of gears, and we had them from a company that's out of business down from North Lansing. It was just a whole pile, and I don't know why we got them. Maybe had some idea of using them for, a sculpture or something.
Right.
And so I got the students together one day, and I said, okay, let's put this thing together. So I put the arc up, and I put the gears, started putting the gears in, and then I built this base. When they reimagined it, they got rid of the base, and Bruce has promised me that we're going to be putting that base back.
Exactly. That's a hill I'll die on.
And I had a picture of it.
Yeah.
I was going to bring, and I didn't. I left it home.
Yep.
But that's how it all came about, was the gears and coming down the side of the sculpture. But it was actually too large for the sail, so I set it aside, and we eventually created that.
Well, it has beauty to it, and industrial beauty, and spur gears are hard to come by these days. The steampunk crowd would go crazy over that sculpture, because the circular spur gears are used in artwork all over now. I know they weren't always done. You mentioned the sail. I think that was the other sculpture I wanted to talk about.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
And I had that. I had pictures, and I didn't bring them. I made a model of it, and then we had some 2x2 tubing, and I built a fixture, and so I had a lot of students working. The instructor that was Kathy Lindquist. She was a full-time instructor. She taught high school kids, and these high school kids, they just like Aunt. They loved her, and she. So we got together she was let her students work with me on. They did a lot of the welding and a lot of the heavy structural, and I was teaching them how to cut stuff and do the work. So they did a lot of that, the welding, but the sail we made. It was how did a fixture and fit it up.
Mm-hmm.
And got it out there.
It's cool. It's beautiful. And through your 46 years, that's 46 years people here teaching, it's vast and it's deep. And I try to ask faculty when they're down here, what's your favorite thing about teaching? Do you have a single thing that's just head and shoulders above everything else? I can't imagine the thousands of people you've influenced.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I never thought about teaching. I had no idea about doing it. And it's an interesting how I came about teaching at Lansing Community College. I had at that time I was working on the day shift at Lansing, Douglas Steel, and I had a fellow working for me that took welding down here at Lansing Community College.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Vern, you could go down there and teach welding. And no, not really. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And the problem was, a shop, if you're a salary personnel on a shop, I don't care what shop it is, you don't take part-time jobs.
No.
And the plant manager actually fired 2 guys because they had part-time jobs.
Part-time jobs in addition to like after hours or during
your salary. You were devoted to that company. That's what you're not supposed to be doing. And so I didn't really think I was going to get this job. So I walked in, the plant manager. He was an interesting fellow, bit of a hard guy, but real nice. And I told him, I said, I'd like to teach Lansing Community College. And I actually got his letter of recommendation here recently. I was shocked.
How about that?
I walked out. I had no intention. If he'd said, Vern, I don't want you doing this, I would have walked back in the shop and didn't even think about it.
Yeah, his head is in the right place.
He changed my life. He changed my life.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think the reason and he was always proud of the fact that he has got a welding instructor at Lansing Community College because he felt he was upset with Lansing Community College because they had a bread truck driver, bread delivery man, and he didn't feel he was appropriate for teaching welding. So
how about that?
Yeah, so he was.
Well, we made out okay with you. So your favorite thing would be influence, maybe? I know that working with students, there's this, I call it pioneer enthusiasm. They just sponges, and if they're into it, they're really into it.
It's interesting. There's some, I've been through a whole lot of different students, and like you say, there's students that will work 3 armpit jobs to get come down and get an education.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that time and again where, they really work and they really take it in. They take everything in. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, and then you get the other end. But most of the students I've worked with are, they, especially in the welding, and they got Lansing Community College right now down the West Campus, got some of the best welding instructors that I've seen.
Really?
And they're all devoted to the skill. The skill of welding.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say.
It's okay. I don't want to pin you down, and we can't talk about this without mentioning Lincoln Electric.
Lincoln Electric, yeah.
Lincoln Electric, they donate the equipment. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. Vast welding. We have welding simulators. I mean, this facility is it's astounding. It's jaw dropping.
Well, the Lincoln Electric, from my understanding, and we don't own that equipment. That's Lincoln equipment, and so they bring it in every 6 or 8 months, and they swap it out with new equipment.
That's great.
And so, And actually, as I understand it, all that welding equipment and that those students are using is already sold.
Really?
It's all, you know, that as soon as that time comes up, the lab techs start packing it up, and then
so
they unpack
flip it and
the other stuff. So,
you know, it's a rare company that will seed their industry that
Yep.
way in such a forward, positive way. I mean, it's remarkable. And there's something, I don't know you really well. We've only talked a few times. I heard this thing, I might have read it, quarterbacks. And I don't know much about sports. I'm an art guy. Yeah, but there's this quality with quarterbacks that is it is like the quality that they look for, and it's not necessarily athletic ability. It's optimism.
yeah.
It's we're alive until the very last second, and being able to be a leader. You strike me that way. You seem like you're very we can do this kind of guy. Yeah, and your wife is over there nodding. Yes, I can see her over here for sure. And that is, sir, that is contagious. I mean, students get that. They pick it up.
Well, that's interesting. Okay. I can buy that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, having somebody to believe in what you're doing, you know, because you're coming out of childhood, you're used to being, you know, disregarded. You know, you're used to being, you know, don't talk, listen, this type of thing, and stepping into that realm where you have somebody like you who's done all this crazy work.
That's interesting because, you know, I look on those 10 years I restored those 5 historic riveted truss bridges, and I asked myself, how did I think I could do that? What made me think I could take a 180 foot, 1880 bridge, I don't know how many, 40 ton, and restore it, and build the equipment and train the crew to restore it.
So you got to answer the question then. Do you know how did you think you could do it? Optimism, right?
And I did it.
What could go wrong?
That's the fifth one I did. And
Now, do these bridges that you do, and we're going back into bridges because it's amazing. Do these bridges go back into service?
No. Oh wow, that'd be about 4 sessions.
I'm sure. Yeah. It's not a simple answer.
My wife will recognize that the reason I hesitate is because of a bridge that we just went across, Freedom Bridge, they call it, in Indiana. But that's but they don't go into, a lot of them don't go into traffic, you know, regular traffic. They try to, I think there's more of an effort to take the bridge off a major highway or a major road and put it in a park. I think there's more emphasis on that today. At one time, there might have been a situation where, we want to restore this bridge, we'll keep it. There's one in Port Huron, there's one in Ann Arbor that they did, and it's in traffic. The Cut River Bridge, that's a riveted bridge, and they have riveted, they did some replication riveted parts on that. But that's a heavy-duty bridge. It's not,
I imagine you'd be careful grandfathering these in because of codes of changes.
Yes.
Well, loads of changes. The traffic has changed.
The bridges, so as I'm thinking, you got to be careful because the Mackinac Bridge has 5 million rivets in it. It was built in the 1950s, and some people might call that a historic bridge. Well, that bridge is never going to fail.
Yeah.
And so, but the bridges that I restored are little county bridges. Like the one it was in the last one I did came from Portland, Michigan, south of Portland on the Charlotte Highway, and it was. They expanded. The bridge needs to be wider, and so there's a lot of code issues. So, and those types of bridges, you see a lot of them disappear, and there's more of an effort to get them out and put in a park.
Okay. Well, the Big Mac is. I actually worked with someone long ago who her husband was in charge of the bridge, and something that fascinates me is makes perfect sense. The thing's 5 miles long. They're always painting it. Yeah. they paint it, and they start at one end, and when they finish, they go back to the other end, and they start painting it over again.
I had a fellow, I've been in contact with people around the country, and it just so happened I contacted the painter on Golden Gate Bridge. He just wrote a book.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book about his experience as a painter, and so I've been in contact with him. I read
That's
his
one of the
book,
largest public works projects in the country's
and
history.
that's what he did. He would start one end, and then 5 years later start all over again.
The red was pretty daring too,
Yeah,
wasn't it? And those footings. I mean, that thing is huge.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I had so it's an amazing bridge, and the Mackinac Bridge is it's just, and the George Washington Bridge. My wife and I went there this summer, and it was just I knew about the George Washington Bridge. I've got a 1930 book on an engineer wrote about the fabrication of it. And,
Really?
And it was just such all experience of walking on this huge mammoth bridge and all
I
that.
can't imagine that you could prefabricate anything or pre-rivet anything in the shop. That you'd have to just build it, right?
Well, it's all riveted. All the massive parts are riveted and then shipped out in the field.
So
that's
Then they put
that's
it
where
together.
95% of the rivets are driven in a shop.
I see.
And then actually rivets that's driven in the field are less value than a rivet driven in a shop
I'll bet.
because of the equipment. It's a different type of equipment. So.
Stands to perfect reason. And I imagine there are certain inspection grades these things have to go through. Now, and I'll just touch on this a little bit, military applications, these old field artillery. I mean, is there any experience that you've had with that, with the government, anything like that?
No, once in a while I'll get somebody contact me about they have a cannon or they have a gun or they have a military, I don't really get into it too much. Sometimes people call me up and ask me about, how they can restore it or something, but I don't get too much into that.
Yeah, you're busy with bridges. Yeah. Now, is there...
I'd like to do, but, if we go into art, one of these days I'd love to be able to do a riveted sculpture, and...
That's what my next question was. What would you like to be doing? Is there a project that is on your list that you want to get around to?
And two of them actually. And Dr. Robinson's a big supporter of it, along with the staff at Lansing West Campus, the dean and the lead person. We have a bridge, a 1908 bridge I have available that we're going to. We're working on coming up with to restore that.
Really?
So we're on the beginning stages. We're still trying to work out what do we need to do to get what do we need to do to be involved in it as an educational experience. And so there's a lot of work yet to be at, but I think there's a lot of support in getting that. And that. And I'm working with Scott Poe, the lead instructor. He's very excited about being part because he's a retired iron worker.
All right.
And he was very
lives and breathes it.
He's chomping at the bit to restore this thing.
Okay.
With students. It's all with the students.
Yeah.
And
sure.
So that is something I'm working on, and I like to work. The other thing, I don't know if it's. As I said earlier, one of the things I really enjoy doing is working with somebody, with an artist, with a idea that they want to convert to steel. I love to do that. It's just like what I got here. A fellow, Lee Cronenberg, he's a student. He still teaches. He still comes down to creative welding where it runs. He's probably 1980s there.
Sure.
And one thing I always liked about Lee, always watching him, as you see him sitting there at that seat, I would sit there and watch this fellow start welding and working on his idea, and I could tell the minute he was gone.
Yeah, in the zone.
I wished I could do that.
Yeah.
I've never been able to do it, but I could sit there and I could tell anybody, and I said, watch it, and you could see it happen. And
I had a conversation with Jim Cunningham.
Yeah.
About getting in the zone creatively, and many creatives have tried to be able to turn it off and on, and I don't think you can do it. It hits, and you're caught up in it.
Yeah.
So
so anyway, it's having that, and so the thing that I wished I always wanted to do, I wished I could put something together where, let's say I had 5 artists around the country. 5 artists was $2,000 to $4,000 and say, okay, you come with your idea. We got the staff. We got the and we'll work with you in making your sculpture.
Oh my God, that would be so cool.
And so, anyways,
that would be so cool. You could get underwriting. I mean, from Friedland. I know they're involved with Scrap Fest maybe, or some other large Douglas, Alro. I mean,
I don't know. That's hard to do. That's
Is it?
Really, so let's say an individual artist. Let's say it limits to 5, maybe 10.
Okay.
And say, okay, you have to have your funding. You come here, Lansing Community College. Let's say $2,000 to $4,000, and you got your $4,000, and we'll give you the space. We'll be able to order your steel, but you have to have your design. You have to have. We're not going to do your design. You show us what you want to do, and we're going to determine whether it's feasible.
Has to be vetted. Yeah.
Whether it's feasible, and if it is, then we'll get your material together, and we'll help you fabricate it and weld it.
Wow.
And they should come up with their funding.
Yeah. I think I'd be in line for that. I heard somewhere that Detroit had they called it a sandbox, and it was like an industrial building full of lathes and drill presses and all these tools. And you could go in if you had an idea and you had to fabricate something. You could go, and I'm sure you had to sign a contract saying if I lose a thumb, that it's not on the company. Right. But you could basically go in and hands-on with this stuff. I often wish that this area had something like that.
There is a company called 3M. I think it's 3M in south of Grand Rapids. It's a machine shop, and they have a section for sculptures, and they have a yard full of sculptures out there.
Yeah.
So, but the idea I would, this is the kind of thing that I did with creative welding is, you bring your idea, and I'll help you convert it to steel.
Yeah, that's great.
And so that was.
I could see where our previous president, Dr. Knight, would have just ran with that ball because he would engage people on that level and get them excited and full bore forward.
Yes. Yeah, and it's I don't know how to go about doing it, and I at this point I really would have to have staff help.
Well, sure.
And because my goal now is I'm working on a book. I'm working on.
That was my next question.
That's trying to come up with. I wrote a lot of articles. My wife edits all my stuff, does beautiful editing, and so my goal is that, and then work on the different projects, research projects, you might say, I do down on campus.
Yeah.
On, riveting and welded sculptures, welds. And
is there anything, I hope I phrase this the right way, given the depth at which you work with this material that is, quite honestly, the backbone of our country, for a long time.
Steel, right.
Is there anything that you're concerned with moving forward?
What a question.
Any items of concern with regard to materials, with safety, precautionary things? Is there anything worth being excited about?
Wow.
Is there? I know material costs have gone up, and has that affected? Let's say there's a project, and the material costs have doubled because steel. I know wood's insanely crazy. COVID. Would that affect the design in a negative way? Would people
that's a good question. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't. Does the material cost affect what you're trying to accomplish? That's a good question.
At the design level.
At design, I tell you the truth, I don't think so.
Good.
Because if you are going to build something, steel fabricate, you're going to fabricate something, and if you can't afford to buy the material to do it, you can't change.
Yeah.
If a structure needs a 1/4-inch plate, you can't design it because of material cost down to 1/8 inch. That's not going to happen.
Sure.
It's
Okay.
going to have to.
Because there's a responsibility.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You talk about material, though.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I write a lot about in my last newsletter talk about wrought iron. Wrought iron is a famous metal that they don't make anymore. It's a great material. And it has some characteristics. It started in 1880s. The last company produced a company called Bayer in 1960.
Wow.
1960. So it was used in ships and buildings, but didn't have the strength of steel, and it's got some really great characteristics. And what I'm trying to do now is get people interested in building what they refer to as a puddling furnace that you can actually make some wrought iron.
Really?
But anyway, that's another game. But that's a great question.
Yeah, I just look at, I mentioned the bridges in Portland, and anybody that's familiar with looking at riveted things, I mean, there's a rivet like literally every 3 inches on this massive image, the millions. You always think, why do they need so many rivets? They just overdid it. Well, they probably did not overdo it.
No.
Yeah, it's a serious business.
No, they didn't. No. That's the engineers that designed that, the riveted structure, they hadn't I don't think the engineers took at that time as they're designing the structure, this takes too many rivets.
Mm-hmm.
They had the equipment to do it.
Yeah.
So they had this massive rivet equipment that if you're talking about that beam,
Yeah.
like I just said, if you go on YouTube and you put in building the Empire State Building, you'll come up with films, and you'll come out in a shop where these guys are using these huge riveting machines to rivet these huge rivets you're talking about.
Yeah.
They just go right on. So I don't think.
That's another thing, though. I saw this video. They were trying to take down this building in some city, and they had this excavator, this crane with a wrecking ball, and they couldn't knock it down. They couldn't knock it down because it was built too well.
Right.
It was these riveted beams. They were just chipping away. It probably took months to bring this thing down. They had to cut it, in the middle of a city. And I gotta wonder. It makes me think about the temporariness or the disposability of certain things today. They look at the way houses are built. Some houses, walking up a stair and it bounces and the windows are cheap. I mean, I don't know. In looking at that, you wonder if they do this, if that translates to structural engineering.
Well, Nan brought up there's a bridge that's been restored in Illinois. It's a riveted bridge. It's a small one, riveted bridge.
Yeah.
And she was watching the introduction. They were doing a piece about the bridge, and they talking about a new bridge, and they said that that new bridge is going to be replaced in 50 years, but this one's going to still be in.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very compelling. I mean, to work in an era where what you did was meant to endure.
Yes.
Yes. These things with lifespans and so on.
Yep.
Well, we gotta wrap it up again,
okay.
Sir. But is there anything you want to add? Is there anything in your future that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just the thing, and just keep. I want to be able to keep working with the staff at West Campus, and work with students and buildings. I still would like to. I'm still looking forward to hopefully that we can come up with a plan to restore this 1908 bridge, put it on West Campus. It's still in the works, and so that's what I'm. At this point, I'd like to see that.
That's very worthwhile. Well, you're highly, highly regarded here and everywhere. You're sort of legendary around here with the footprint, the impact, and the scope of influence that you've had over the thousands of people that went through the program. Vern Mesler, structural steel fabricator and LCC alumni,
Still employed.
teaching instructor extraordinaire. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
And yeah, I look forward to working with you in the future.
Great. I look forward to doing something.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Art Happens Here is a production of LCC Connect. If you want to check out what I've been talking about, visit lccconnect.org. Thanks for lending us your imagination.